Good afternoon. It is a great honor for me to be here today among you all and celebrate International Women's Day in support of women across the world. I want to take this opportunity also to recognize my fellow Afghan women who, despite of immense suffering and distress, are standing strong and strive not only to survive, but are on the forefront and are fighting for their rights and for their dignity. Today I'm here to give you an account of the situation prior to August 15. I'm sure everyone knows August 15, and share with you my lived experience. I started working in the gender equality in 2002. And it was immediately after the fall of Taliban rule in 2001. Last 20 years, I see it an era of achievement for Afghan women because Afghan women prior to that was going through a dark era. They were deprived of their basic rights. They were deprived of all those basic rights that I think in any other society people would just take it for granted, but they didn't have it. But last 20 years, women of Afghanistan, people of Afghanistan, used the opportunity to develop. I think I would say that last 20 years were the era of development for Afghanistan, an era where we all strive to rebuild our country. Women played very important role during the 20 years. And they also not only played a role to build their own country, but they were using this opportunity to also get what they lost prior to it, because country was going through war for decades, and regain their dignity and rights. A lot was achieved in the last 20 years. We came long way. Women who were not able to go and seek basic education. In the last 20 years, we managed to achieve way more, way much more than any other nation could think. It's not a big time period. 20 years is nothing. But we managed to have women in the decision-making power. In the decision-making, we had women parliamentarians. In the parliament of Afghanistan, women were comprising 25%, quite a lot, and I think highest in the region. We managed to send girls to school. Girls started getting education. There was lots of changes in the social sector for women. Women were running for the presidential elections. So these were the things that we really managed to achieve in the last 20 years. I don't want to portray a very positive image of the 20 years. There were challenges, and these challenges were also immense. Security was a challenge that was going on throughout 20 years. Corruption, insecurity, inaccessibility for women who were living in the rural areas. So the development wasn't equal across the country, but we took some important steps. However, I also want to note here that security deteriorated over the 20 years. We started with so much ambition and hope in 2001 after the fall of the Taliban regime. But slowly and slowly, security deteriorated. Particularly in the last few years, the war became even extensive, and there are many, many casualties. And we all know that the impact of war is always more on women and children. Women and children are impacted way more. We have thousands of widows. We have thousands of orphans. And people were actually, they didn't wanted war anymore. They were tired of war. They wanted peace. That's how the peace negotiations started a couple of years ago. And because people were really thirsty for peace, even there were women who were living in the far parts of Afghanistan. I can just give you the example of women in one of the most conservative and insecure provinces of Afghanistan, in Helmand province. A few years ago, they came out and then joined the peace caravan. They put tents and they wanted end for the war. So people were extremely, extremely tired and they wanted peace. Of course, they wanted peace, but there were also some red lines and some of those red lines were, they wanted to retain the democratic values. And then what happens? There is month of August last year, 2001, one of the most chaotic months, I think, of 2001, when security started further deteriorating. The provinces were falling in the hands of Taliban one after the other. A very chaotic month. We at UN Women, I was with UN Women, of course, then, we were supporting women protection centers across the country where survivors of violence and their children were accommodated. As the provinces were falling, we had to evacuate and relocate them to Kabul. And also there were a lot of people coming because as IDPs to Kabul because they were thinking that Kabul is much more safer and nothing is going to happen in Kabul. It was also because the US-Taliban peace deal, there was an speculation that one of the conditions in that peace deal is that Taliban will not enter Kabul until there is a power-sharing agreement between the government of Afghanistan and Taliban. So that's why everyone was quite optimistic that nothing will happen in Kabul, at least. And majority of us, including myself, I wasn't like in the belief, I didn't think that Kabul will collapse. We thought, of course, there is negotiation going on. The parties are putting pressure on each other and the focus is on the provinces, but Kabul will not collapse. I just did not believe in this. And just 3 days before the collapse of Kabul, we at UN Women, we held a meeting with the women leaders. It included women parliamentarians, civil society leaders, and members of the negotiation team. And in that meeting, we were discussing the participation of women in the peace process, how to increase it, how to increase the representation of women in peace negotiations. So we had no clue where we are going. We had no clue what's going to happen just 3 days later. We knew that there's going to be some sort of settlement, peace settlement. We knew that Taliban will come and they will have share in the power, some sort of arrangement. They will share ministries or whatever. But we didn't know that they will come, take over 100%, and Kabul will collapse. This wasn't anything that we actually were thinking. And then what happens? Kabul falls overnight. we wake up on Sunday morning, 15th of August, and we hear that Taliban are at the gates of Kabul and president left. It was chaos. I'm sure some of you might have seen it. It was widely covered by the international media. It was chaos. People were afraid. People didn't know what's going to happen because nobody was really waiting for this. We knew something is going to happen. We knew things will change, but down the line in 6 months, not overnight. People were afraid. And then there were people who experienced living under the rule of Taliban 20 years ago. So it was quite hard for people to believe that it's possible to survive under their rule. And particularly because they were an insurgent group in the last 20 years. They were conducting suicide attacks, they were assassinating and people. So it was really hard to believe that it would be possible to live under the Taliban. So overnight, Kabul turned into a different city. It went from a colorful, vibrant, lively city to a black and white and a dead city. It felt as if our dreams all shattered, and one could see hopelessness all over on the faces of people. UN Women was present there, and they're still there since then. Alison Davidan, who is the representative of UN Women Afghanistan, she was supposed to be here today with me in person, but she couldn't. But she sent a video that we would play for you to see, and she can actually share what UN Women has been doing since then.
Thank you so much, Semin, for your words. I'm joining you today from Kabul, and I can't bring anything new to what Semin Jan has said. Nothing can be more telling than hearing directly from a women's rights activist like Semin what it was like then in August and what it's like now. It's difficult for anyone to leave their homes. What I can share with you is what it was like for a women's rights organization to stay behind in Afghanistan and to continue to fight for women's rights under the Taliban. What it means to adjust all of your planning and your programming while also supporting your colleagues to leave the country. A women's rights crisis like the one we're in the midst of in Afghanistan can't be solved or addressed without global support. And so we're so thankful to you in Australia for the contributions that you've given us. As UN Women, we've used those funds to provide centres for women survivors of violence and to provide safe houses for women human rights defenders. We're working to give cash to women-headed households across the country to address their basic needs. We continue to invest intentionally and directly in women's civil society organisations to support them to do the work that is so needed on the ground. And we're continuing to advocate daily with the Taliban and also with the international community to fight for the full spectrum of women's rights, not just their right to protection, but also to participation, their right to pursue higher education, to work in whatever profession they choose, and to live free and equal lives. The responsibility to fight for women's rights cannot rest on the shoulders of Afghan women alone. It's our global responsibility. And it is our honour as UN Women to serve with them, and it's our commitment to continue to do so. Thank you.
As Alison rightly said, fighting for our rights is not only our responsibility, it's the shared responsibility. And I just want to say that Afghanistan and women of Afghanistan are not the same women that used to be 20 years ago. There's a lot have changed. And therefore, today, you see women furiously fighting for their rights and furiously are there to express what they want and express their demands. So this fight is everyone's fight, and we really look forward to having the women of the world and the world standing by us and supporting us. Thank you very much.